Hey guys, welcome back to lecture 2 of software development. It's Yusuf here, and how is it going, everybody? So we left our lecture 1 at the data types in Python. That was string, integer and float, and now you can understand the difference between them. I hope you do the practice after taking my first lecture. And if you don't do the practice, then I recommend you to do practice for half an hour or 1 hour, or what time period you can give to your practice, because practice is very necessary thing in the programming language. If you want to understand or learn the programming, any kind of programming language, you need to do a practice a lot. As much as you do practice, you will quickly learn the code. Don't try to learn the code by heart. Just try to learn the code by doing the practice. Okay, now we are moving further to our lecture 2. That there comes the list. Concept of list in every programming language is that we can store different types of data types in the list, in one list, and that data types can be integer, that data types can be float, or can be string. At a time we can store all these three data types in one list, and if we want to call them, we can call them separately. Okay, if you want further. Now you have one question, because in the previous lecture I have told you the functionality of variable. Variables are used in every programming language to store the data types. But does the list and variables have the same functionality in programming? Absolutely no. They have the same functionality in programming at some extent, but they are the different things in programming actually. Because in the variables, if you store 3 strings, so when you call that variable, these 3 strings are called. But if you store the 3 strings in any list, you have the option of calling them separately. You can call only one string from that 3 strings, and you have the option of calling the only second string from the 3 strings you have stored in that list. And at the same time, the list has the advantage of storing multiple data types in one list. Otherwise, in the variables, you don't have the options of storing multiple data types. You can store float, strings, as well as integer in the list, but in one variable you can store only one data type. That can be string, or that can be float, or that can be integer. So list is the different functionality in this way. So how can you call the things from the list? I have told you that in the list you have the access of calling the specific elements. So how can you do this? So here we have an example. We have created a list in which we store multiple strings. You can also store multiple data types, but for just taking example, I store as multiple strings in the list. That is track, candle, redline, and specialized. And then I stored that list in a variable name for easily calling that list. So you can see in the print statement, after I call that variable name in which I stored the whole list, and after that variable name I used the 0 number. What is this 0 number indicating here? This 0 is actually the index. So now just first understand the concept of indexing. Indexing is present in every programming language, but in Python the indexing starts from 0. So if we count in the list, the indexing starts from 0. That is 0, track is present at the 0 index and the candle is present at the first index. And after that, red line is present at the second index and specialized is present at the third index. So I want to display the track from the list. I want to call the track string from the list. So I mentioned its index here with the variable name. You can call candle, or you can, if you want to call the red line or specialize, you have to mention their index. If you want to call the red line here, you have to mention here its index, that is 2. And if you want to call the specialized here, you have to mention its index, and that is 3 here. And one important thing is that in making the list, you have to use the large brackets here. These types of large brackets that indicates the list. Wherever you see the things in that large bracket, you have to understand that this is the list in Python programming. Okay, moving on. We can also modify the elements of our list. And how can we do that? Here I created a list and I stored some strings in that list. Now I want to modify the element at the index 0. I want to replace it by another element. So how can I do this? Just writing a simple line of code. Here I mentioned my variable in which I stored my list, and now I mentioned here, after my variable mentioned, I mentioned the index at what index I want to replace. So I want to replace this string, that is coding, with a programming, and you all know that the coding is present at the index 0. So I replace it with programming, and then I print my variable, and in the output you will see, instead of coding, you will see a programming here at the 0 index. Similarly, you can replace MMA, weightlifting and cycling by changing the index value here. You can type here 1, so it will replace the MMA, mixed martial arts, and if you type here third index, it will replace the cycling with the programming, or whatever you would like to replace with. Now moving on. We can also insert the keywords in the list. So here again, for example, I created a list of a string and stored it in a variable Yusuf. Now I want to insert a keyword or a string before coding, before the 0th index. So before the 0th index, for inserting another string before the 0th index, I use the insert keyword with a variable I stored in a list. So I write Yusuf.insert variable name .insert, and I mentioned here the index value. Before that index value, just remember that thing. Just remember that thing. Before that index value, that string beach party will be added. When you print that variable name now, there would be a beach party at the 0 index, and coding will move forward to the first index, and so is the case with the MMA and weightlifting and cycling. These all move further at the next index. Coding will come to the first index and MMA will go to the second index, and weightlifting, same as the others, will go to the third index, and cycling would have a fourth index then. If we add the beach party at the 0 index, what index value we mentioned here, the string after that we want to add will be added before that index value. Not before that index value, at that index value. I wanted to add a beach party string at the 0 index. So the insert keyword will add the beach party string at the 0th index and move the coding string which was present before at the 0th index will move towards the first index value. Similarly, you can insert that which party string or any string you want to add in the list at any desired index value. You can insert at the second index value, third or fourth index value, which whatever do you like. Okay, you can also remove the items from the list. First is using the del command, but del command has some disadvantage. If you remove by using the del command any keyword, it is very easy. Just use the del keyword with the variable name in which you stored the list and mention the index value, which element you want to remove, at which index you want to remove the element. But after using the del keyword, you will not have the access to recover that delete element. You cannot use that delete element. But if you do programming, there is a lot more cases in which you have to use that delete element or that separated element. So how can you use that deleted element? So for this we have a pop command. We use pop command which also removes the last. Now in the pop command we have the same functionality as the del command, but one step more. We have the advantage of recalling what we have deleted by using the pop command. We just use for using the pop command, we just use the pop keyword. Like we have made a list here, you can see, and I stored that list in the variable name Yusuf, and I called that variable name, and after calling that variable name, I use a keyword pop, and I use that and store that variable plus pop keyword in another variable, and I print that variable. Okay, so here you can see with the pop command in the brackets, in the parentheses, I didn't mention any index value. So if I didn't mention any index value, by default it has a functionality of removing the last index value. So it will by default, if you don't mention here any index value, it will by default remove the last index value of your list. So here the last index value is cycling, so it will remove the cycling from the list. But if I want to if I want to remove any other index value, so I mentioned here the index value like this. So I mentioned here the index value in the parenthesis 2. So you are seeing the different types of syntaxes here, and you are thinking that how can you remember these types of syntax? These are all different. So don't try to learn that syntax. You will learn that all when you do practice. Don't try to learn them by heart. Just keep that in your mind. Now there is another method of removing the values from the list. I have created by using a remove keyword. I just make a list here of certain strings and store it in the variable and print that string, and after that printing I remove there we would not apply the concept of indexing. We would use the index. We would use a string which we want to remove from particular string which we want to remove from the list. So here we want to remove the red line string from the list we have created here. So I mentioned here that string and it will remove that string. You have to practice them by yourself after ending of this lecture too. I will show you the practical examples, but these practical examples are not enough. You have to practice them by yourself after completing this lecture and then your favorite IDE. the sort keyword in the programming language. What does the sort keyword do? Sort keywords, as the name suggests, it will sort the list. Here in the car list you can see BMW, Audi, Toyota and Subaru. So here comes B first and then A, after that B. So by using that sort keyword, you can sort them in the alphabetical order, or if there would be the integers, you can sort them in the integer order, like 1 should come before 2 and 2 should come after 1. So by default the sort keyword sorted by default in the ascending order, like it will sort like this. Audi in the print, when you after using the sort keyword, when you print this variable cars, Audi would come at the 0th index and BMW would come at the 2nd index, and so as the others. Or if you want to reverse the order of the sorting, you just type in the sort keyword reverse is equal to true and then print. Or if you want to reverse the order of this list, like you can see Subaru is at the 0, 1, 2 at the 3rd index. So if you want Subaru to be at the 0th index and BMW at the 3rd index, like if you want to invert this list, mirror that list, so you would use the reverse keyword with that variable, with the variable in which you stored the list. Here you can see the example, car reverse and print cars. Similarly, if you want to find the length of the element in the list, you would simply write the len keyword, len, in the small len. Okay, and in the parenthesis you have to write the variable name in which you have stored your list. Then it will give the length of your list. So here if we see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 elements in our list, so it will print 4. So 4 is the length of your list. Okay, it's a lot theory. Now we will see the practical examples of what we have just learned, and some other things I have for you to do some practical examples. Just open your node editor of your favorite node editor, whatever it is. I recommend you the Jupyter Notebook or Anaconda. Just open it. Okay, now I have told you how to make the folders and files in the Jupyter Notebook. So I am going to my folder which I created in the first lecture, and now I am going to my new file which I created for this lecture. Just okay. Now how we can also make in the notebook, we can also make the headings. So how can you make the headings? Here you can see in the drop down menu, you can see markdown, raw, NPC convert and heading. Okay, just tap that heading button at the heading menu and type here what we are going to discuss, list. Just write shift enter and we have print that below. Okay, so now what we are going to discuss: for loop. Let's make it a heading again. So what is the loop in programming language? So concept of loop in any programming language tells us, if we see a list here, in the list we store different data types like integer, float, or whatever string. So by using the loop concept, we can perform actions on that particular data type one by one, not at the same time at all the strings. One by one we can perform the actions on that string. So here we can see the example. I have a list. Let's create a list. Created a variable magician, and in that variable I am going to store a list of a string. That is Alice. Let's see. So here you can see I have created a list, and now I am going to use the concept of for loop. You can write all the elements you have stored in that list one by one in the form of a list. So you can see in the for statement I used for a and magician. You can write anything here, any keyword you want to use here, and that means that a means the index. So let's execute the program. We have created a list, and when I use for a and magician, first it starts a loop. And how it starts a loop? It goes at the 0th index for a and magician. For it is like for at the 0 index in magician, it goes here and then print that 0 index, and then again it continues, it loops back for A and David. For A and David means one in magician again, it means for first index in magician there is David, and then print that first index. Then it loops back and goes to the second index for second index in magician, and then print that second index, that is Carolina. So in this way we can print all the list elements. So for simplicity of the program, I just print these all the strings, but you can also perform the multiple operations at different index values by using the for loop keyword. Okay, now using another keyword, that is range. Range function in the programming. So we use the range keyword with the for loop. So just write for always use here the colon, and after the use of that column, if you are using the anaconda, so it will mark indentation automatically. But if you are using any other ID, so you have to mark indentation by yourself, and if you don't mark the indentation, then there will become the error. So you have to mark the indentation here after the for loop. So I just want to print the values from 1 to 5. I just write here print and value. So here you can see. So in Python, whatever you type at the end index value, whatever it is, it will display after subtracting 1 from that index value. So I write here 1 to 5. So it means 1 to 4. 5 minus 1, 4. At the last index value, there must be a subtraction by 1. So if you want to print from print till 5, you have to write here 6. So after subtracting 1 from 6, it will print 5. So you will got the values from 1 to 5. You can write any value, you can suggest any variable here. I just write value here, you can suggest anything. For let's suppose you can take A, for A in range 1 to 6 indentation, and I want to print that A. Now you can see it is printing from 1 to 5 because I have taken the last index 6 here. Okay, so this is the functionality of range. As we move further on, we will discover a lot more functionality regarding the range function. So I just want to say, don't be confused. As much as we do, as much as we go forward in this course, we will understand much more, and many things would be clear which are not cleared yet. Okay, now if you want to make a list of integers from some specific value to some specific value, so there is one method. You would manually make a list by using large brackets and storing that in a variable, and in that list you would type manually the integers like 1, 2, and another method for doing the same thing is that just simply write a variable and then use the list keyword and then use the range keyword, and after that in the parentheses I just want to print 1 to 6. So you can see it has automatically made a list of integers. So it will be easy for you by just writing these 2 lines of code instead of making a long list of integers. Just use that keyword list and range in your code, and you got your list. Okay, now what if you want to perform some statistical or mathematical operations inside the list? Just make a list here. A is equal to okay. So if I want to know the maximum greatest element in that list, so I just write that use the keyword max a and then print, and it has shown us the maximum keyword, that is the greatest keyword in that list, that is 89. So same is the case if I store here the strings in the list like alpha, so it will, the max keyword also works on that string. It has 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 2 3 4. According to the letters it will count. So the Yusuf contains the maximum letters in all these strings, so it has given us the maximum string length that contains the Yusuf. Similarly, we can perform the minimum. We can know the minimum in A, that is alpha, and if I add B here and make a list, just copying it from the above, and if I want to do a sum of all the elements in the list, I just write B. Now it has done the sum of all these elements in the list. Now there comes a very important concept, that is the concept of slicing. Let's make it a heading again. Okay. So as the name suggests, slicing means you will cut the list into different parts. Like you are seeing the list here, list of integers here. You can cut them into several fragments by using the slicing keyword. So how can we do this? We can see here. I just created a list and stored it in a variable name layers. Just write here okay. I have created a list and I stored it in a variable players. Now I want to make a fragment. So 0, 1, 2 and 3. I only want to display the names. I want from the 0th index till the 2nd index. I don't want this to display in my print in my final output. So what I just do, I just write print and then I write a variable name, that is players, and with the large brackets I mentioned here the index value 0 to second index. Now you can see it has only gave us the first two strings and the rest of the string has not come to us. So in this way we have got the fragment of a string from 0 and 2. 2 means 2 minus 1 means from till the first index. If I also want to include this, I have to make here 3. Now it is included. Okay, now if you want all the elements of that list till that element, just write 3. This is another way of doing the same thing I have done above. You can also mention the first index value, or you have a choice. You don't want to mention that first index value, don't mention that first index value. Okay, now if I again copy paste, and I don't want to get the values from the 0th index, I want to get the values from the second index. Okay, so you can see here, after the second index, it has printed the Sama and Muzammil here, and it has neglected the first 2 index value, that is 0 and 1, Zubair or Yusuf. Okay. I forgot to make a zoom, so maybe it would be little blurred for video, but now I have make a zoom, so now you can see the code clearly. We have studied a for loop here, and then range function here, and for loop again with the range function, and then how to create a list with just 2 lines of code, and then how to use the statistical analysis on the list, how to perform the statistical analysis on the list, and the concept of slashing in the list. Now we have another important concept to understand after the list, that is tuples. The good news is that tuples have the same functionality as the list, but there is one disadvantage of the tuples, or you can say it as the advantage, because in the tuples you cannot append another tuple into it. So I forgot to discuss the append keyword here. If we move further back to our code, let's zoom it a little bit more. Let's suppose I created here, just use the above list, because I have a shortage of time now. I am running offline. Okay, I have created here a list. Now I also created here another list. Fruits is equal to okay. Now I want this list which I created after players. I want to add this list in my first previously created list, that is players. So how can I do this? I just use the variable name of the first list dot append, and in the parenthesis I use the second list, and then print my first list. Now you can see the second list is added into the first list. So in the list we have the option, we can add another list or we can add elements in the list, but in here comes the tuple. In tuple we do not have the options of adding anything in the tuples. We have and also tuples start with the parenthesis. The list starts with the large bracket, but in the tuple we use the parenthesis. So here we just take a look on the example of a tuple. Quickly creating a tuple name dimensions, and as I have told you, we will use the parenthesis here, but in the case of the list, we use the large brackets here. And then print. Original dimensions here, and then I am going to use here the for loop for a n dimensions. Just check that spelling. That spelling must be the same as that variable. I am using that variable here. And as I have told you that there should be a colon, and after that column there would be an indentation mark, and I am going to print that A. Now you have seen here in that tuple it has printed this. After that, making that tuple, I have make a statement here, that is original dimension, and print that statement. And after that I have used a for loop here, and that means for 0 index in the tuple, print that 0 index. So at the 0 index in the tuple, that is dimension here, and it is 200 at 0 index. So it has printed the 200 here. So again the loop come back at the 4 index in dimension, means at the first index in the tuple name dimension there is a at index 1 there is 50, and that print that 50 here, that first index here. So it has printed this. Okay, so that's it for today, and I hope you will do a practice, and I recommend you to do a practice. Just spend some time after hearing this lecture, spend some time by doing some practice, because by doing some practice is the only way you can learn the code. Don't try to learn the code by heart. Try to learn the code by doing the practice. Okay, goodbye, see you.